Hello everyone, this is BDSM Gen Y, and I'm Lilin.
And I'm Alice.
And we'd like to start this episode with some thanks to everyone from Pet Life for all of your wonderful comments and suggestions. As you can see from the lighting here, we're working on implementing some of them. Special thanks to Lunatic Design for the crash course in three-point lighting.
Yep.
Now, on to today's episode. We are discussing consent. What is it, why is it important, and when can you give it? So to discuss what is it first. Consent is when you give somebody permission to do something to you. If you initiate a hug with someone, you're giving them consent to hug you back. Consent is not permanent, it is on a case-by-case basis, and it can be removed at any time for any reason.
Correct?
Now, why is it important?
Why is it important? For many reasons. Let's start with the kink-specific reason first, because what we do is very dangerous. Not only physically, and obviously, for physical reasons, you should find out if someone has joint pain or has a broken bone or is favoring their left side for some reason before putting them in a suspension rig that might, do actual damage to them. Also, there are the emotional reasons. At best, if you don't get someone's permission or consent for doing something to them, then that makes you either ignorant or naive or just a bit of a dick. At worst, and I don't throw this word around lightly, it is considered assault, particularly when you get into things that are either physically violent or possibly sexually violent. There are people out there, and I am one of them, who have had trauma in their past and therefore are especially sensitive to being touched without permission. That means if you touch me and I didn't give you permission beforehand by saying it, or he didn't give me permission beforehand, or you did not come to one of us and ask if you could touch me.
Don't be surprised when we get mad about it.
Pretty much.
And you'll find lots of people like us out there. It's pretty much the common standard. People within the community hold themselves to a higher standard of social awareness than the average vanilla. And because of that, you're going to have to be more aware of consent and how important it is to the people around you. My own personal rule, if somebody doesn't initiate something to me, then I, don't initiate something to them. If they don't offer me a hand to shake, then I don't shake their hand. If they don't offer me a hug, I don't hug them. Unless I've known them for long enough to know what's going to be okay and what's not going to be okay.
Now, what might be safe is if you extend a hand, and if they don't take it, don't get offended. Or if you reach out to hug, but you don't complete it, and if they don't hug back, don't get offended. Basically, don't be offended.
We know it sounds silly at first, but people will appreciate it and respect you for it because there are a lot of people involved within the community that have really bad stuff hiding in their past. The last thing you want to do is dredge it up and make them relive it when, it's not your place and you don't want to hurt somebody.
And I mean, at worst, this is exactly what people talk about when they have those high-profile rape and assault allegations, like when you've got the football players and basketball players going, well, she was drunk and she was coming on to him, so it wasn't rape. Well, no, it definitely was. You want to know why it was?
Because you can't consent to anything while you're drunk.
That's correct.
If your judgment is impaired, you can't really consent to anything. If somebody comes to you drunk and wants a flogging, you should refuse on principle. Because they could come to you the next day and go, what happened to me? Why am I beaten up on the back? I am going to, take you to court for every cent that you did.
True story.
Yeah. So, I mean, have consent. Do it when you're sober. If you're emotionally upset, you also can't give consent.
No.
If you're terribly sad, or you're really, really happy,
angry or
anything else.
Hungry, even. I mean, if it's distracting you from making good choices, then no, you can't really give consent.
Yeah. And also, don't believe implied consent, not within the community.
No.
Implied consent is the devil. Implied consent
Evil.
Implied consent is when, you believe that you have consent for something because, hey, it's socially normal, and then you do it, and then, everyone's getting mad at me, and why are they getting mad at me?
Yep.
Where, if somebody's in the middle of a scene, socially speaking, it's, within the vanilla world, it would be perfectly acceptable to tap them on the shoulder, or call their name, or something to interrupt them and ask them if you had a question. If you do that, I know some tops who consider if you interrupt their scenes, you giving them consent to hit you.
Pretty much.
So you should wait until it's over and then ask.
You
But
should be aware.
it's just one of those examples where normally you would have consent in the vanilla world and you're not going to in the BDSM world. So be cautious. Consent's all about being careful.
Just because there's a naked woman walking up to you and hugging you, that does not mean that because she's naked you have consent to fondle her boobs.
Yep.
Maybe you would in average everyday life. Maybe because most of the time naked women don't walk up to you and hug you.
How many times in average everyday life do people walk up and hug
Well,
people
if
naked?
you're-
I mean, I've been kind of disconnected from the average world for a while.
Okay, to be
so
fair,
I have to check in.
To be fair, in the theater world that happens a lot more than you'd think. But I guess that's not really average everyday life either. So
Okay.
I'll give you that one.
All right, I was gonna say I did not really have a whole lot of people walking up to me nude wanting hugs when I was a vanilla, but okay. You did live in the north. I lived in the south.
I did. Things are a little different up there.
Regardless.
Regardless. Don't think that because you have consent for one activity, you have it for another. Always, always ask to be sure. It doesn't make you less sexy if you ask. It doesn't make you less confident if you ask. Most people will be grateful and thank you. They won't think you're silly. They won't think you're exaggerating. They definitely won't think you're making a big deal out of nothing. They will make a big deal out of it, though, if you don't ask.
At the best, they will be grateful. At the worst, they will be neutral. Better to be neutral than risk offending somebody and possibly hurting somebody when you don't mean to.
Oh, yeah.
So, next week, we have an interesting topic to discuss.
We sure do.
We're discussing polyamory and structure. And the reason for this is because we've been, as always, reading FetLife.
Right.
And it's very common, we've seen among the polyamorous sections of FetLife, to state you have to do it entirely with no structure, relationships will go where they may.
And that's a totally acceptable relationship model to have, but it's not the only working relationship model, certainly not within kink and certainly not within polyamory.
Yep.
It's okay to be poly and want there to be some semblance of
structure
in your life.
Yep. So that's what we're going to discuss next week. And until then, as always, I'm Lillian.
I'm Alice.
And if you have any questions or anything else you would like to know, please email us, and we promise to read and respond.
And we also have a blog now, which is a corresponding blog at courtingchaos.blogspot.com. We have it in the links.
It's down there.
It's in the
So you can go check it out. It's written by our lovely Alice here, who has far too much to say that she can cram into a 9-minute, 10-minute show. So until next Tuesday, we'll see you then.